The Yud Gimel Amid Aleph, 6 lines into the page, Hanami. But let's just review what the Gemara was talking about. So the Gemara said like this: Cheir Shait V'Katan is not able to shecht a regular animal unless people are watching. But if people are watching, then it's kosher b'diavad. Fine, because all you need for shchita is a ma'isa shchita. The Gemara said like this: Rav Yechanan asked the kasha, do they have kavana? Do they have machshava? So, by the way, I just want to point out, I explained the Gemara yesterday, because I think it's the Pasha Traveling where with Taisus is Mahalach, not Rashi. Rashi is a completely different approach to the Gemara, which changes things, I think, dramatically. But kids are like this. The Gemara asked the Kasha, Rav Yechanan asked the Kasha, do they have machshava? So the Gemara says like this. Why the Gemara wants to know, why are you asking machshava? There's a Mefursha Mishnah, there's a Mishnah in Kalim. The Mishnah in Kalim is very clear that they do not have machshava and they have maisa, right? So what did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah said that when it comes to kavana machshava is negeya shechting a carbon, right? They can't shecht a carbon because they don't have machshava. So he asked the kasha, do they have machshava? So he says, I don't understand. Why are you asking machshava and not maisa? Because you know the Mishnah in Kalim, the Mishnah in Kalim. If you know the Mishnah in Kalim, then that covers both machshava and maisa. What did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah said that if you have an acorn and a child carves it out, it's now mekabel tumah because that's a maisa. But if they just decide I'm going to use it as a kli, it's not mekabel tumah. So that same Mishnah addressed both your questions. So the Gemara says, fine, you're right. What Rav Yochanan was really bothered by is what's called machshava mitoich ha-maisa, which means you do a maisa, but it's clear from your maisa that you're having machshava. And what's the case? The case is you have a carbon oila that's in the south part of the Azara, and the child takes it from the south to the north and then shechts it. Normally, a child is not able to have kavana to say that this is a carbon oila, but over here, he dafka brought it from the south to the north, indicating that he knows what he's doing. Or do you say, no, he's still a kid, and the fact that he moved it from the south to the north, he doesn't know what he's doing. He just happens to like that spot, whatever. Because again, he's not saying this is an oila. He's doing a maisa without indicating clearly. It's clear from his actions that he knows what he's doing, but he never said this is an oila. He just took it from the south to the north. The question is, do we say that because he did a maisa that's nikar, that's clear from his maisa that he's having machshavas? You say no. Maybe he's a kid and he just didn't like the animal over there. He liked the animal over here. I don't know. That's the shayla. It's machshava metoich maisa, because that's not covered by the Mishnah. The Mishnah covers machshava. The Mishnah covers maisa. It doesn't cover a machshava metoich maisa, which means a maisa that's clear that you're thinking. So the Gemara asks a kasha, Hanami Amr Rav Yechanan chad zimna. Why is Rav Yechanan asking this? Didn't he already talk about this? Rav Yechanan himself addressed this halacha. Where did Rav Yechanan address this halacha? He addressed the halacha with the following concept. The Tanan, the Mishnah says, now we all know, this is a concept we've had many, many times throughout our Daf Yomi journey, and that is that fruits and vegetables are not mekabel tumah unless they become wet. They have to become wet at some point since they're detached from the ground, and not just become wet. You have to be happy that they became wet. Meaning, if it rained on it and you're happy that it got rained on, now it's mekabel tumah. If you're not happy that it got rained on, you're upset by it, it's not mekabel tumah. So it says the Mishnah, Hamala peroisav legag minei hachnima. If you bring produce to the roof because it has bugs, there's bugs where it is, so I need an area where there's no dirt, so I put it on the roof. The halach is v'yardaleim tal, and then it gets dew on it. Eina b'chayutan. It's not mekabel tumah. Why? Because I didn't bring it to the roof for it to get rained on. You see, sometimes people would put it on the roof because it would get dew and it would get rained on. I dafka brought it to the roof because I didn't want insects, not because of rain. So I'm not interested in it getting wet. Therefore, it's not mekabel tumah. V'im nischaven lekach. But if you, as an adult male, brings it to the roof and you intend for it to be brought on the roof in order to get wet, then hareze b'chiyutan. This is all pretty posh. Now, helam cheir shait v'katan. Let's say a cheir shait v'katan brings it to the roof. Now, aval bishin ischaven lekach in b'chiyutan. Even now, bringing it to the roof is not a maisa that would make a mekabel tumah. What will make a mekabel tumah is machshava, right? It's intent. Because if I bring it to the roof, is it order and it gets rained on? Is it mekabel tumah? The answer is it depends. What are you thinking? This is in the category of machshava. Children are not able to have machshava. So if a child brings the fruit to the roof and it gets rained on, you say to the kid, did you want it to get rained on? He says, yeah, I'm happy about it. It's machshava. Children are not able to have machshava, so it's not mekabel tumah. But if, let's say, Because they have a maisa, they can't have machshava. That Mishnah is a case of machshava. Because the maisa itself is not indicating. The maisa itself does not indicate that they wanted to get wet. The maisa is just, I'll bring it to the roof. What would make it wanted to get wet is the machshava. Children are not able to have machshava. So far, that's a Mishnah. Comes Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan said on that Mishnah, Vam Rabbi Yochanan, Lo shanu ela shalei hipich ba, avol hipich behen areza b'chiyutan. Let's say after it gets rained on, they go up to the roof and they turn it over because they want it now to get rained on the other side so that it's nice and even, it's covered on all sides. So that's a maisa, that it's clear from the maisa that their machshava is a certain way, and Rabbi Yochanan says that it works. Again, there's three categories. There's just maisa that they're able to do, where there's no kavanah needed. But that's not what we're talking about. There's something where just machshava that they're not able to do. And then there's maisa metoich machshava, which is an act which clearly indicates that they're thinking about something. So over here, he went to the roof, and it's getting rained on, and they're turning them over so that all the rain gets on the other side as well. That's a maisa that's clear that they're interested in the rain going on all over. That's called a maisa matach machshava. And Rav Yochanan says it works. So why did Rav Yochanan have to ask a kasha? Again, the case that Rav Yochanan was addressing was you have an animal in the south of the Azara, the child brings it to the north of the Azara, then shechs it. The question is, do we say that the fact that maisa indicates that he wants it to be a carbon, is that effective? So Rav Yochanan asking this kasha. Rav Yochanan himself said that it's effective when it comes to tum and tahara. He says that it's mekabel tumah when they flip over the fruit. So Rav Yochanan himself already addressed the case of machshava mitoch maisa. So why is he asking over here when it comes to shchita, or just in general? He's already talked about this once. Why is he asking the question? He himself already paskin this way. So the Gemara says, I'll tell you the answer. Hachi kami boile, deraisa or derabara? He agrees that it's a thing. The question is it a thing deraisa or is it only a thing derabana? You see, the case of the fruit, I could argue that in that case it's makabel tuma, not mina Torah. It's not mina doraisa. We accept it as an act. Chazal said, okay, we'll be strict, and now it's makabel tuma. Chazal were strict, but is it a din doraisa or is it a din derabana? That was. Meaning, in the case of the oila, if I bring it from the south to the north, if that is only a rabbinically effective move, then it's not going to be a kosher shchita. Rav Yochanan once said that it works, but he never said whether it works deraisa or derabanan. So now he's asking, that goof is his question, is it deraisa or is it derabanan?
What's he actually doing when he turns it over? It's potentially...
You see, but he never says what he's doing, but it's clear what he's interested, that's the point, he never says outright, this is what I'm doing. But it's clear as day that he's obviously interested. No, but by him turning it over, he's clearly turning it over so that it gets rained on.
But it hasn't become makabel tuma. It hasn't.
No, the question is it now makabel tuma?
You haven't created the clear. You haven't.
No. True, but by fruit, all you need is that if you put it in a situation where it gets rained on and you're happy about the rain, so then that's enough for it to now be makabel tuma from here on out. So the question is, over here, he did an act which is clear that he's indicating he wants it to get wet. So Rav Yochanan says it works. So why is over here he's asking? The answer is that a din derabanan or a din deraisa? That's what Rav Yochanan's question was. Okay. Now the Gemara over here is a slightly different version. It's very, very similar. We'll run through it fairly quickly. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak masni hachi. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak has a different version. The Amar Achia bar Rav Yochanan katan yesh loy maisa ein loy maisa. Again, is a maisa? Are katanim able to do a machshava metoch maisa? So Amar lei Rav Ami v'tiboy le machshava. Why are you not asking machshava? Ma'ishna machshava d'leikam miboy le. It's not ein la machshava. Why are you not asking machshava? Because there's a mafresh mishnah. Maisa nami loy tiboy d'tanan yesh la maisa. So why are you asking a maisa? Meaning you're asking maisa. According to the first version, it was machshava. Now it's maisa. You're asking maisa. There's a mishnah about this. So he says hachi kami boy le deraisa derabbanan. Again, it's the same conclusion. He's asking whether they have machshava metoch maisa or whether it's a din d'oraisa or only a rabbinic stringency. Upashit, and what is the psak? Yesh lan maisa afilu midaraisa. They're able to do an act. If all you need is a maisa without a machshava, without kavana, just like shchita, that they're able to accomplish even on a biblical level. They could shecht a regular animal, no karban, no machshava, just act. They can do that on a biblical level. Ein lahem machshava afilu midarabanan. Something that you don't need an act, but you need the mindset, they're not able to do at all, even rabbinically. So it's nothing. Not the raisa, not the rabbanon. It's nothing. Meaning, shechting a karban, you have to have machshava for an oila. They're not able to do that, neither deraisa nor derabana. It is nothing. What they did is ephes. Machshava nikeres metoich maisa, but if they do a maisa where it's clear that they have machshava, that third category, midaraisa ein lo midarabani yesh lo. It's just a din derabbanan. Meaning that concept is only rabbinically recognized, not biblically recognized. It would only work on a rabbinic level. For a carbon, it would not work because you need that to work deraisa. It'll be makabel tuma midarabbanan. Again, it's a rabbinic stringency. It's not deraisa. Now, just to finish up to the Mishnah, this is the last Gemara Menachos. So, if you remember from the Siyumim, same words. Boi minei shmuel Rav Yehuna. Minayin l'masasek b'kadshushu pasal. How do I know that if I'm masasek when I'm shechting a carbon that it's pasal? What's masasek? Means I don't even know that I'm shechting a carbon. I'm throwing knives, and I happen to throw a knife and it cuts the neck of a carbon. How do I know that that's not an effective form of a carbon? Meaning, how do I know that I have to have machshava that I'm shechting? So. Shenemar v'shacharis ben habakar shetei shchit l'shem ben bakar. You have to shech for the sake of the animal. Meaning, in other words, you have to know that you're shechting. Now, the rule is, as we said by the siyum, the rule is anytime for something to be puzzled by a carbon, you need two psukim. One is to tell you that it's a problem l'chachila, and one is to tell you a problem b'di'evin. So I have one pasuk. Where's the second? Amar le'zu b'yadeinahu. I already know this. La'akiv minayin. How do I know that it's ma'akiv? Where's the second source? He says, you shall slaughter it according to your will. You have to do it for das, meaning you have to know what you're doing. That's a second source, and that's a problem even b'di'evin.
So basic question.
Yep.
We cannot do it. The Mishnah says you can't do it.
What?
We don't allow it because they might make a mistake, but it doesn't.
Because they don't need machshava by a carbon, but it's not a carbon.
No, I mean,
Yeah, because you don't need any machshava at all. By killing an animal.
saying it's not good.
No. No, so this is a carbon. This is misasi b'kotchim. This is a kotchim. This is a carbon. Yeah, this is a carbon. Adrabah, by a regular animal, if you throw the knife and it cuts the animal's neck, it would work. This is a carbon dafka. By carbonis, you have to have a machshava. No, we trust the cheresh v'katan if people are watching. Because we don't trust that they're going to know how to do it, but conceptually, if you're watching, it will work b'di'evin. So, but not by a carbon. A carbon, you need machshava, you need das. Okay, new topic, new Mishnah, new topic. The Mishnah says like this: Shchitas oived kechavim nevela. If a guy shechs, it's a nevela. Meaning, even if the guy shechs properly, it's a nevela. You can't eat it. It's as if it was not shech, as if it was shot in the head with a gun. Why? Because the pasuk says v'zavachta. You have to shecht. Only a yid can shecht. A guy that shechs is possible. Okay. Umetaba b'masa. And by the way, once it's nevela, then like all nevela, it transmits tova. Good. So it's a very simple Mishnah, and that is that if a guy shechs, it's no good. It's a nevela. Let me ask you a question. Why isn't it worse than a nevela? You say, why would it be worse than a nevela? I think it should be asa b'hana. Why? There's a concept that the average guy, when they would shecht, they would have mind for the avodah zarah. Why are we not concerned about the avodah zarah? We're clearly only concerned about whether a guy can be a sheikhet. We're not worried about the fact that maybe he thought of yashka when he was shechting. Maybe he was thought about Hindu stuff, whatever. That's not the point. It's not avodah zarah. It's just not kosher. So says the Gemara, nevela in iser hanolo. It's only a nevela, but it's not asab hana, meaning it's not avodah zarah. Mantana, who is the author of our Mishnah, Rav Chia bar Rabba, Rav Yechanan, Deloi Rav Elazar. It's not like Rav Elazar. Why? Di Rav Elazar Hamer Stam Machsheves Oivi Kechadin Avodah Zarah. Rav Elazar's shita is that the average guy, when he shechs, he's thinking Avodah Zarah. He's thinking that part of the animal he's going to give to Avodah Zarah. So according to Rav Elazar, the average guyish shaychit is not just that it's not kosher; it's Avodah Zarah mamish, and it's asa b'hano. You can't sell it. So our Mishnah is not like Rav Elazar. Okay. Now, new topic. No, I'm saying we're not disagreeing with that. That's the conclusion. Our Mishnah is not like Rav Elazar. Good. Rav Ami Omar Hachi Ketani. Rav Ami wanted to point out one thing though. Shchitas Oived Kechavim nevela. He pointed out if a guy shechs, it's not kosher, but hamin Oived Kechavim, meaning a min is okay. What is a Kechavim? What's a min? A min is a very religious person. Now, that means someone who is very, very involved in Avodah Zarah. Evangelical, I think that's what you would call them, right? They're very, very, very religious. Now, a min can be a guy or a Jew. It could be nebuch if a Jew does Avodah Zarah, but bekitzer. So says Rav Ami, our Mishnah means like this. The average guy who's not so religious, if he shechs, it's just not kosher. But if you have an evangelical guy, like a very, very frum guy, then it's Avodah Zarah. Okay. Then you have to assume that they're Avodah Zarah. So the average guy, we're not choishish that they're doing it for Avodah Zarah. But if the guy's a very frum guy, Rav Elazar holds every guy is frum. He says, no. Dafka min. Dafka as a very frum guy. or a very frum Jew, by the way. I mean, meaning a Jew who went off the derech and he's very, very religious about it. A min is not necessarily a non-Jew. A min just means someone who's the Rashi describes as oduk b'avodah zarah, someone who's devoted to idolatry. It could nebuch be a Jew as well. Now, Tanino Hadatarabanan, the truth is we already have this concept is already taught in a Mishnah. The Mishnah, in the Brisa. The Brisa says, Shchitas min lavodah zarah. If a min shechs, we have to assume that he had avodah zarah thoughts, so the animal is now asur b'hana. Pito paskuti. His bread is the bread of a kuti, meaning you can't eat his bread. Now, by the way, you should just know, this is even worse than the average guy. The average guy, if they make bread, you're not supposed to eat it. It's called pasakum. We never serve pasakum. Right? Pasakum is a problem because we're afraid of intermarriage. Paskuti's worse. When someone is very, very religious, they said the bread is asur, and unlike goyisha bread where there are heterim, right? As we all know, there are heterim. There's no heter for a paskuti. So this is a very high level isser of the bread. Huh? That if there's no other pas yisrael that's on the same madrega, pasakum is mutter. Pas palter is mutter. I'm saying pas palter is mutter under certain circumstances.
You're translating pas akum as pas palter.
I'm saying that category there are heterim for. There is no heter for paskuti. That's my point. The average guy who makes bread, if there is no bread of that quality in the community, you're able to eat the bread, not a paskuti. Okay? Yeino yayin nesach. If a min touches wine, the wine is forbidden. Svara of sifrei koismin. If they write a sefer, even if they write a sefer from Tanakh, you have to burn it. Right? It's not considered. It's considered like that when they wrote the name of Hashem, were choishish that they had avodah zarah thoughts. It's like when they say God, they're not thinking the right God. Peiros of Tvalin, we're machmir that their peiros are tevel, meaning even if they're Jewish, but if they're a very religious avodah zarah Jew, their peiros are tevel. The yesh omrim, go to the next page, af banav mamzerim. And some say even the children mamzerim. Why would the children be mamzerim? Because the same way they don't care about God, they don't care if their wife commits adultery. So their children, it's a bit of a stretch. Just because they're very religious about idolatry, they don't really care about the wife. And the Tanakama, who does not add the mamzeris, he says no, ishtar lemafkir. Just because he likes church doesn't mean that he'll allow his wife to. On the contrary, they're probably actually very, very religious. So this Tanakama does not agree with that assessment. Okay, now here's the interesting question. This is a good point. What was the halacha from our Mishnah? If a guy shechs, it's not kosher, but it's not avodah zarah. But if he's evangelical, a min, then it's a problem. Why am I not concerned that every guy is evangelical? Right? What does our Mishnah say? That if a guy shechs, it's not avodah zarah, it's just not kosher. But if you know that he's very religious, then it's a problem. Why don't you say that all guy? Why aren't you chayshish that the average guy is evangelical? Why aren't you concerned that the average guy is a min? What do you see from here? Our Mishnah follows the view that we had in the beginning of Avodah Zarah, that Goyim nowadays are not so religious. Meaning the average guy, you see from this, that the average guy is not so religious unless you're told otherwise. It's not that the average guy is religious until you're told otherwise. It's the average guy is not religious until you're told otherwise. The Gemara says, why am I not concerned that he's a min? Why don't we just say that the average guy is evangelical? The answer is, Goyim are not religious. Says the Gemara. I think there's many religious guys. What are you talking about? There's no religious guy. The answer is no, there are, but the average guy is not that religious. The average guy, he'll go to church, but he's not such a frumak that he's gonna every single time he shechs an animal, he's gonna think of his idolatry. There are, but it's a minority, so you don't have to be chayshish for it. He follows the view of Rav Yechanan that said, "Nachrim shebechutz laaretz lav oivdei avedis kechavim ela minhag avseinu v'yadeinu." Rabbi Yechanan said that the average guy in Chutz Laaretz is not so religious. They just do it because that's their family practice, but they're not so frum. So therefore, if the average guy shechs, I don't have to assume they're doing Avodah Zarah. If I know they're religious, then that's a separate concept. But the average guy, it's just treif. It's just not. So wine, because I'll tell you why. Because wine, the concern is not idolatry with wine. The concern is intermarriage. The concern if you drink with or machme maybe asa b'hana because of Avodah Zarah, but the issa, the actual main takana of wine with a guy was to avoid intermarriage. Intermarriage is a concern with all goyim, but when you're thinking about avodah zara, that's a minority. That's a small percentage. The ikar isser takana of yayin was b'noi sehem, and then once they asked it, they said, okay, well, aser b'hano because of avodah zara. Most people think it's avodah zara. It's actually intermarriage is the main concern. If you drink together, you could lead to mistakes. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yosef bar Minyoni Amar Rav Nachman, Ein minin ba'umois avdikachavim. Now this line is a very interesting thing. Meaning, the term min, the stringency, not the term, the stringency of evangelical only applies to Jews. Meaning, in other what he's saying is that if there's a Jew who's very, very connected to avodah zara, very severe. A guy on that same madrega has leniencies. Now, which
The term min used to be used for a Christian.
it just means someone who's very religious.
I understand. Maybe that's because the original Christians were Jews.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe. But the point is, so this Gemara is saying a little different. They're saying that the chumrah of a min only applies to Yidden, not to Goyim. Now the question is in what halacha? Meaning, he's obviously referencing there's a case that he's thinking of where it's a min, Jew min, Goy min, Goy lenient, Jew strict. What case is he referring to? So says the Gemara, Lemai, what case are you referring to? Ilay mel shchita. It can't be shchita. Shchita of a Goy is a problem. If a min shechs, it's avodah zara, whether he's a Jew or not. So I don't see the distinction. I mean, again, Rav Yosef bar Minyumi in the name of Rav Nachman referenced the case that were more strict by a Jewish min than a Goyish min. In what halacha? It can't be shchita. Hasha shchita's min di Yisrael amid asira. They become me boy. It's partially that it's a problem by both because they're thinking avodah zara thoughts. Of course, it's avodah zara. Why should I make a distinction? Ella meridin. Maybe it has to do with meridin. Meridin means that if you see them in, you could technically lower them down into a cave. You don't kill them, but you sort of cause their death by lowering them down to a cave and then take the ladder away. The problem is you're allowed to do that to both type of minim, Jew and Goy alike. So what's the case where we're more strict with a Jewish min than a Goyish min? Says the Gemara, Hashi Yisrael Marina have become me boy. So I'll tell you the case. I'll say it outside, I'll say it inside, and that's accepting a carbon. If a Goyish min, an evangelical Christian, sends a carbon because he wants to give a sacrifice to Hashem, we accept it. A Jewish min sends a carbon, no thank you. So that's an example where we're more strict by a Jewish min than a Goyish min. We will accept a very religious guy's carbon for Hashem, but not a Jewish religious guy. A Jewish min. We will not accept their carbon for Hashem. That's the distinction. Says the Gemara, the stringency of a min of a Jew or a guy is accepting the carbon. The Tanya, the Brisa says, Mikem. Mikem means you shall bring from the Jewish people a carbon, implying not all Jews can donate carbonos. Velo kulchem, lohoti es hamumar. If someone is a Jew, but he's doing avodah zara, he cannot send a carbon to the Beis HaMikdash. He's out. But mikem bekem chalapti v'lo yelevikachavim. But that stringency does not apply to goyim. Goyim, if a guy sends a carbon and he's super religious, great. We don't have as much of a standard, and therefore we're not going to be as upset. So we'll accept his carbon. Good. Now, Mimai, the Gemara just has a question. So you're saying by a guy we accept the carbon, but by a Jews we don't. Maybe it's different. Maybe Dilma Hachi Kamar, Misra Mitzdiki Kabel, Meravi Yishir Loi Kabel, Avikam Klal Kaloi. All you see from this psukim is that there's a difference in Jews and Goyim. We're saying the difference is by a guy will accept his carbon if he's very religiously idolatrous, but by a Jew not. Maybe opposite. Maybe Goyim we don't accept their carbon at all. I agree that the psukim are indicating that Jews and Goyim are different when it comes to karbanis. But maybe it's to say by Jews we accept karbanis and Goyim never, under no circumstance we accept a carbon from a Goy, religious and not religious. So I mean, in other words, how do you know that we accept karbanis from Goyim for Hashem? So the answer is Lo Yisrael Gadai. The Tanya ish matam ish l'rabos avcham shenoidu nedarim davis b'Yisrael. The word ish tells you that we accept karbanos from any ish, even goyim. So I know that goyim are included. Therefore, this pasuk that makes a distinction between Jews and goyim are obviously referring to the minim, the idolatrous category. By a goy we'll accept his carbon, but by a Jew we will not. Just to finish up the daf, the Mishnah said that if a goy shechs, it's treif, it's nevela, right? Because they can't be sheichtim, and it's tameh. So the question is, once I tell you something's a nevela, of course it's tameh. You don't have to it's pashut. Nevelas are mekabel, are transmit tumah. So why do you have to mention tumah? So the Gemara says metame b'masa pshita, kiven the neveli metame b'masa. It's pashut. Once you tell me that it's a nevela, of course it's metame b'masa. Why do you have to mention it? That's a standard halacha when it comes to nevela. All nevelas are metame b'masa. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabba hachi ketani. Zu metame b'masa, v'yesh la'acherish metame afilu ba'oyel. I'll tell you what it's referring to. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira had a shita. His shita is that if you sacrifice an animal for avodah zarah, it becomes a sacrifice for avodah zarah. It's metame ba'oil. It's metame ba'oil, like a dead body. That if you cannot enter the same room as it, as a sacrifice for avodah zarah, it's a chiddush of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, because the pasuk describes avodah zarah like a dead body, and just like a dead body transmits tumah through airspace, so too an avodah zarah transmits sacrifice of avodah zarah transmits tumah through an airspace. That's the reference in the Mishnah. The Mishnah is saying that if a goy shechs, it's a nevela and it's metama, meaning it's metama b'masa by carrying it, implying that if he had done avodah zarah, it would be different. It would be metama through airspace. So it's actually a reference. It's a wink, wink, an allusion to the shita of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. That this one's metabe b'masa because it's just an avela, but if it was taka an avodah zarah, sacrifice for avodah zarah, it would be metame ba'oil, it would be metame airspace, and it's a reference to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira shita. The first version is that it's a wink wink that we agree with Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Some have a different version that it's actually disagreeing with Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Again, both versions agree it's referencing Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira shita. The first version is that it's in agreement. The second version is that it's disagreeing. The Gemara says ikad amri amar Rav hachitani zu metame masa v'yishal cher shikazu. This is metame b'masa, as is a sacrifice for avodah zarah, and it's not metame ba'oil. Shemetame masa v'in metame ba'oil. Deloy zeizu tekaretz chavav. Deloy Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. So there's two different versions. Both versions agree that it's referencing Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. The machlekes is whether it's an agreement or disagreement. What is Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira shita? That again, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira shita is that if you sacrifice for avodah zarah, the korban for avodah zarah is metame like a dead body. How do I know that if you sacrifice for avodah zarah, shemetame ba'oil, if the dead animal is metame like a dead body in the airspace? The pasuk describes as a sacrifice for avodah zarah as zivchei mesim, as a sacrifice for the dead. The pasuk of the pasuk is just saying that avodah zarah has no kaiches, like it's a dead religion. But he's saying no, it's mamash like a dead body. Just like a dead body is metame ba'oil, so too a sacrifice also is metame ba'oil. Just to finish up the daf, if you shecht at night, and a blind person shech, meaning, even though it's at nighttime and you might think that you can't see it so well, kamash no, even at nighttime there's usually enough light that you could shecht properly at night. Says the Gemara, hashoichet diavid in l'chachila lo. The lashon of the Mishnah is hashochet, that if you shecht it at night, then it works, implying that nighttime is not lichatchila. Says the Gemara, or mini, I have a contradiction. Our Mishnah implies that shechting at night is only b'di'eved, but the Brisa says, lo oilam shechtim. You're allowed to shecht whenever you want. Bein bayom, bein balayla, bein barosh hagag, bein barosh hasvina. Right? It's like the green eggs and ham, right? On the top of a train, on the top of a plane. You could shecht whenever. You could always shecht. That's, by the way, the Stefanski's thing today is going to be like green eggs and ham, but just like a dead carcass. The point is, Bekitzer, so you're allowed to, so our Mishnah said it's only b'di'eved to shecht at night. The Brisa says you're allowed to shecht at night l'chachila, and the answer is very simple. Is there a lamp? If it's at night and there's no lamp, it's only b'di'eved, because it's pretty dark, and we're concerned that you won't do it well. If it's at nighttime, but you're in a well-lit room because there's a lantern, then it's fine, even l'chachila. So the Gemara says, Rav Papa kishavuka kenegdai. It's l'chachila when you have a lantern right by you, so that it's well-lit. Rav Ashi dekanami. Rav Ashi says, I'll prove it to you. Diktani hasam dumya de'yoim. Hacha dumya de'suma. Shmamin, I'll prove it to you, because it says it's only b'di'eved, and it lists in two people. It lists at night and a blind person. Now, a blind person doesn't have a lantern. It's obviously dark. So too, when the Brisa says it's b'di'eved, is where it's at night and it's dark, i.e., no lantern. Stop here.